So something that recently crossed my mind, and one that I've realized is a thread from a while back, is the evolution of Foe's involvement in the overarching story. They said, do you think we'll ever cure Foe after what he did to save Mash? Seems kind of tragic that he should have to live life as a dumb animal so that we can live at all. By the way, if you haven't already, make sure you guys sign up for the Patreon. You get access to early content and priority on your requests. So this time around, we're gonna start off comment first, and they say, honestly, I have doubts that he actually lost his intelligence like we thought he did. His later appearances have him displaying a lot more intelligence than I would expect from a mere animal. I suspect he is already learning again. I mean, he had to start from nothing and learn at some point in the past. I think this only reset his progress. And given a little more to that, Foe has always served as a very wholesome but odd element in the story. Through the entirety of the first parts of FGO, we find ourselves building this relationship, only to later realize the actual magnitude of this so-called innocent creature. We come to find that he's an accomplice of Merlin, in the Fate timelines at least, just for him to give it all up at the Temple of Time when he goes out of his way to resurrect Mash. And I really want to go back to the Temple of Time to look at that scene in particular, but this time around addressing his position as the premature beast, Cav Palad. We don't have much time, so I'll be brief. I am going to bring you back to life. I am the embodiment of comparison. I am the beast that feeds on the energy that comes from humans who grow and compete, who envy others' strengths, who regret their own weakness. I am the beast who stands over any and all opponents. I am Cav Palad, a beast of disaster. In a different world, I was called Primate Murder. As long as I stay away from human society, I am just a harmless animal. That's why I remain on a remote island. But the mage who was taking care of me was a real bastard. Hilarious, that being Merlin, of course. He kicked me out of his warm, snug tower and forced me to live outside. But that is how I ended up in Chaldea, which is where I met you and Fujimaru. Over the last few centuries, I have accumulated incredible amounts of magical energy. Using that, I'll perform a miracle that even true magic could never achieve. That is huge. And I'm glad that this is here also, because I've had a couple of people come to the channel and say, why should we even care about true magic anymore when we have events just like this one that transcend even the true magician? And we'll cover an entire topic going over that, but I'm just using this as a reference to highlight the reason why that is a good argument, because there are many other situations like this. So this accumulation that's been happening all of this time, he notes to only be the most recent centuries. The amount of energy that was spent to bring Mash back to life wasn't even from his entire existence, just the energy as of late. So just looking at that on its own kind of speaks to the idea that this could be an occurrence that happens again, given the right place and time. Back when it first happened, it kind of lended to the idea that we were taking a different path with this character, that in the Fate timelines in particular, due to Merlin's involvement, the trajectory of so-called Primate Murder had changed. But in this case, it will be for the same greater good of helping humanity flourish, which is very important considering that when we did fight against Goetia, we were in fact the last hopes of the human world. So us going down meant that it was game over. Considering that the function of a beast is an overwhelming passion for humanity to the point where they antagonize us, you can say that he's also playing the same position that he would have anyway, just from a different perspective. Although I suppose death in the Temple of Time doesn't quite count in reality. What I'm going to do is transfer my future to you. It will be powerful enough to extend your life past the 3 days you have left. However, I am not fully grown, so the time I can give you will only amount to an average human lifespan. Once I've done this, I will just be an ordinary beast. I will lose my intellect and my personality. Up until now, I've been chiming into your conversations meaningfully, but from here on, all I'll be able to do is make animal noises. But I don't want you to worry about that. Nothing will change for you guys. Still, it is a bit of a lonely way to go out. That's That's why I wanted to at least say goodbye here at the end. Goodbye, MASH. My time with all of you this journey has been truly wonderful. Normally around people, I transform into a hideous beast, but this time I was able to stay in this form until the very end. So again, you have Foe outright admitting that he will no longer be the entity that he once was, that he's going to give that up for us, and he will now just move as a normal animal. All of this without being fully matured in the first place, which is funny because just as I read in the last comment, we have seen multiple signs of Foe regaining said intelligence that was perceived to have been lost forever, even out of his own mouth. The more I look at this, the more it rubs me in the sense him losing that character that he once was is more of a red herring to the purpose that he will later serve in the overall story. And it would make a lot of sense too, right? Just think about how innocent Foe seemed up until the point where he saved us at the very end of part 1 FGO. Now that this has been established, who's to say that he can't do that again? Or who's to say that he couldn't do the opposite? He is supposed to be a beast of humanity after all. He reveals the fact that he's been fully aware of everything that's been going on, which has been pretty apparent even back then, because whenever something was off, Foe would always nudge us to let us know where we should and shouldn't get involved. But the main thing to point out here is that I would say there's no reason that Foe is just still around for the sake of fan service. One thing that I've come to realize is one of the best ways to hide something is in plain sight. And I feel like Foe is an incredible example of that. You always knew that he was there to do something in the first half of the story, especially knowing just how intelligent he was. You just didn't know what exactly until it actually happened. Given his full background as Primate murder, it would have led you to believe that it may have been something that worked against us. But instead, with Merlin's intervention, he does the opposite. But that was the first time around. Now with him seemingly regaining that intelligence, you have to wonder what position could Foe have for us going into the latter parts of FGO now. If they truly wanted to get rid of his character, he would have just specifically died and we would have lost him just like Roman. But unlike Roman, instead of him just flat out dying, you have him continue on at the cost of him giving up his sentience. When the maid sent me out, he told me, go, experience all the beauty the world has to offer. And well, I have seen truly beautiful things. There are some evils that can be defeated without shedding blood or crossing blades, and that is what has made this possible. Congratulations to you, the wonderful people of Chaldea. You have defeated Beast 4 without so much as a single blow. And this is when he does the actual sacrifice itself. It also shows us one of our first instances of how the beasts of humanity are beings that truly care and are beings that truly work for humanity and not against it. It's just that the evolution process may give life to a form that shows us otherwise. And we can see that alongside beings like Goetia as well. He tells us that Merlin, with good intentions, has told Foe to go out and experience the world and all of the things that he might not be able to if he's stuck inside the tower with him. Now that we're here, this gets even more interesting when you consider Merlin's role in the story. We know that Merlin is always there to help us when it matters the most. But many times over, and I've addressed this in a couple of videos, we also know that Merlin plays the role of a jester of sorts. And so the same way he has shown an interest of keeping us alive, we also know that he has an interest of watching us teeter the line of life and death itself, which he has openly admitted in the story literally. With that in mind, there's nothing to say that he released Foe with good intention. As a matter of fact, there's a lot more to say that he may have been expecting the opposite and he just wanted to see how it turned out, like he normally does. Back from his conversation that he had with Anna in Babylonia, he says, I mean, I say that, but I am no different. To tell the truth, I don't have a heart like a human because I have no emotions. I feed off of people's dreams and harvest the subtleties of the heart from them. The only reason I keep on being a nice bro next door is because I'm expending the emotions I've gathered up until this point as fuel. It's difficult for beings such as us to think and live like humans, but there's no rule that what's inhuman must necessarily be an enemy humanity of mankind, right? You're allowed to side with them because it's fun. Whether they love you or if you can love them is a different matter. And she asked him, do you love mankind, Merlin? Of course not. I'm inhuman. A half-breed sired by an incubus. I've done all kinds of awful things in the name of helping human society. I love the patterns that mankind weaves. I've never really liked individual humans themselves, and trying to justify it all to myself only tore me apart. It's what resulted in me locking myself in my tower, but that's a different story. Who cares if you hide who you are until the end? It's not going to hurt anyone. Bro, I fucking love Merlin, bro. Bro, you gotta really listen to what Merlin be saying, dog. Fujimaru won't care that you hid something. He doesn't care now, right? Fujimaru is happier being with you now than he or she would be if they had found out your secrets. If there's a time for you to throw away everything, it's going to be only in a single instant. Watch for that instant as you fight. Of course, amid all of this foreshadowing, it's worth mentioning that I don't want that kind of ending at all, cause that would be boring. Sad partings aren't my style. I prefer to deceive and disparage the enemy and emerge as the victor unharmed. That's the most beautiful patterns humans can create. And I don't know if people take conversations like this as literal as I do, but he's another example of hiding in plain sight. Merlin pretty much comes out the bag to tell you exactly who he is in front of your face. It's so transparent that most people might tend to just overlook it. Bro basically said, man, I'm gonna be honest, I don't really give a fuck about y'all. I'm just here living my best life. It's like, what? You know, him saying that it's foreshadowing literally, him saying that he wants to deceive and emerge unharmed, all these strange statements from somebody that's supposed to be an ally. I can't help but think at times Merlin also has something in store for us. Just like releasing Foe could have been something else and we just got lucky. Another thing that he points out is one of the greatest assets but also flaw in Ritsuka's character, the fact that he's so trusting in every individual. Merlin presents the idea that being around him you're allowed to be yourself even if you weren't exactly good or evil. He further points out the fact that anything that may be perceived as him being this quote-unquote good ally is just him running off of emotion that he's gathered from being around us. And once that runs out, or if that runs out, there's nothing to say that he will continue to look at humanity in the same way. And so I will always look at people like Merlin and even Foe with the side eye because the story outright tells you that's what they're there for. However, one place where they do differ is that Merlin is a lot like Doman, where he says he doesn't love humanity. He just enjoys what comes from them. So he couldn't be an actual beast like Foe. In that case, he would just be something similar on that level. And that highly speaks to the way that Foe has always treated Merlin, because Foe is one of the first beings to point out something for what they really are. One of the first things that happen when the Lost Belts come around is when we run into Tsiah, Foe just starts wigging out. And then later on, fast forward to Tugunska, we find out exactly what he means when Tsiah is actually able to reach her beast level and become an actual threat. In the Lost Belts, on the other hand, it seems like Foe's character has taken a turn where he's often running from situations that he otherwise would have helped us in, as if he were trying to avoid something. You know, when Britain comes around, he doesn't want to go. Even up until the point of LB7, he just blatantly disappears. Also gives the idea that the interactions that he's having may not be as joyful as the ones that he experienced the first time around before he sacrificed himself. You know, the singularities in the Lost Belts, multiple times over, they told us that it's very different. With the singularities, we were actually addressing things that threw a wrench in humanity that shouldn't exist. Where in the Lost Belts, on the other hand, we, and even Ritsuka in particular, are making the declaration to say that our world is greater than yours. Because by this point in time, those worlds have truly been established. And if we're speaking speaking to people like Foe and Merlin, feeding off of the energy that's around, this energy isn't necessarily good for Foe. And it appears as if it's only getting worse. That thing, whatever it is that Foe doesn't want to run into, may just be our impending doom. Whether that be a transformation that involves him, whether that be a transformation that involves Ritsuka, he picks and chooses his battles very precisely. Because we have seen the other hand, and this has also been mentioned, where in the bad ends, you see him save Ritsuka in very select situations where he could have been taken out. This leads us into the conversation of who Foe might be in the present time. If you look into Cab Palak is one of the many creatures that was hunted down by Arthur in actual myth. And in certain variations, he even kills Arthur. But in most circumstances, Arthur is the one that gets the upper hand. This is what gives him the foundation for becoming a beast in the first place. Cab Palak was a monstrous cat in Welsh legend, given birth to by the pig Henwin of Cornwall. The cat was later to haunt the Isle of Anglesey and was said to have killed 180 warriors when Sir Kay went to the island to hunt it down. Looking at another source, it started life as a black kitten. The kitten was cast into the sea, but it crossed the Menai Strait and was found on Anglesey, where the sons of Palak raised it, not realizing that Cab Palak was to become one of the 3 great plagues of the island. This is also really dope when you consider that we kind of feel the same circumstance of raising Foe, misunderstanding the severity of what he truly is, even though he told us what he was in the Temple of Time. But how could you look at somebody like that as a true enemy when he went out of his way to save you? Kinda complements the background. In another scenario, Cab Palak was fought and slain by Sir Kay, or so it is implied. But the poem that this comes from is incomplete. I'm sure it's already been mentioned many times before, but there is a disturbing lack of Sir Kay in the overall story. And it always has been, and it's been that way for a long time. All we get from that man is pure references, but at least we do have a depiction. And then you have the portion where Foe reaches Arthur. Outside of Wales, the cat's opponent has been transposed to King Arthur himself. Several works relate a battle between an anonymous cat with King Arthur himself, rather than Sir Kay. Sometimes the beast wins, sometimes King Arthur wins. And this is important to note because another thing that I often see is the overwhelming lack of Arturia in King Arthur in the main FGO story, and everybody's still wondering why is that. Is it because of the White Titan? Is it because of the lead up against a great threat that we yet to know about? We've seen iterations like the Draco chapter where him, Hassan, and Proto Merlin are going up against Harlot, but one fight that he actually has a tie to and will be really important for him is the battle against Cab Palak, the battle against Beast 4. So that's something that we can't put off the table. Now that that's put into the air, we go into the origin of what Foe was supposed to evolve into. Primate murder, something that's been around for a really long time and got reintroduced back into FGO as Cab Palak after Merlin tamed him. He in fact started as a dead apostle ancestor, much like ORT was on the list and he got worked back into FGO. As a matter of fact, Primate murder was the very first dead apostle ancestor on the list. He was in the top 10. Primate murder, details unknown, murderer of primates, the white beast, Ultro's demonic dog. In other words, the beast of Gaia, or the monster of Gaia. And Ultro is Arkawa's sister, someone that we've also been anticipating for a very long time. Ultro, a hybrid of a true ancestor and a dead apostle, vampire princess of the dead apostles, black, master of blood and contracts, Primate murder's owner, appears to be a 14-year-old girl. On multiple occasions, you've had the profile and even Nasu himself mention how bad it would get if Primate murder were to get involved. Nasu says it takes 7 guardians to control the Primate murder, and the servants of the Grail War are based on these, which in that case, in the past, I've entertained the idea it would take 7 Emias to truly take this beast down, which makes it even more threatening when you consider that Merlin alone was still able to tame it. Even more so, it speaks to how dangerous he is. In another question, I got the impression that ORT, Primate Murder, and Ultro Broomstud, and so on were obviously stronger than servants. They're both beings that live in mystery, so the only thing that can be said is that it all depends on the situation. It comes down to having the means of killing the other guy somehow. Among those, Earth's rules won't even apply to ORT in the first place, and Primate Murder has the super advantage against primates, so they're in a league of their own. Just the very idea of him being mentioned in the breath of ORT after knowing the horrific things that go down in LB7 makes him all the more terrifying. And then again, he is the invincible white killer, the white beast, Gaia's monster that follows only Ultro. Although not a dead apostle, he mimics Ultro, so he got a taste for human blood, has absolute authority over whether to kill or let a person live. So in another world, in a distant timeline where a foe isn't so lucky to run into Ritsuka or Merlin and everybody else, he was originally the companion to Ultro. And in that variation, he has the outright authority over all humans, period. If Primate Murder shows up in that particular situation, humanity is baked, as if we weren't stressed out enough. And this kind of speaks to the idea what could possibly happen after we fix the earth, because we know we're still in the bleached era. What happens when the people start to return after foe has witnessed all that he's seen? Also, another scene that I found interesting, and this goes all the way back to Kagetsu Toya, which is a side disc that came with the original Tsukihime. One of the results would be Ultro Broomstud, but even she hasn't reached a level high enough to succeed the Crimson Moon. No, since she has Gaia's beast under her control, she may be even more powerful than the Crimson Moon in a way, but Ultro herself is too unstable. So even way back then, it's telling us that having Primate Murder around gives him an authority that even the king of vampires himself cannot replicate, which really sounds like madness incarnate. Piggybacking off the Gaia's beast concept, and the reason that I said back in the day is that in the Tsukihime remake, Primate Murder has now been removed from the list as a dead apostle ancestor, at least in the first half of the remake. There's nothing to say that they can't reintroduce him in the other half. There's nothing to say that he couldn't be in Tsukihime 2, but as of right now, he's been taken out of the picture. And at first, when I found this out, I was a little disappointed. But now, as I look back at it, you have to wonder, why is that? Because we know that in the remake, Nero was replaced by Vlad in the story, but he was never taken off the list in particular. So it makes me wonder, what is Nasu cooking with Primate Murder now? This Beast of Gaia concept makes me believe that it has something to do with what's going on in FGO, where we continue to entertain the idea of the main character Ritsuka making this transition, and foe may very well have a heavy involvement. And it's super dope because it could go so many different ways. It could go in the way of Primate emerging and we have to go against it. It can go in the way of following Ritsuka's transition and it also being a companion to the transformed Ritsuka by the end of the story. So at that point, it would serve as a mirror to Ultro, but in the Fate timeline. He would kind of be playing the seat of her for different reasons, or it could be something else altogether. But regardless, there's a lot of potential there that I feel like is really slept on, and we're slowly diving into points of no return where eventually we're gonna have to answer.